Okay, I'd just like to say thank you to everybody who's been following along, has subscribed, and as well, of course, interacted and had these nice exchanges with other YouTubers about the hobby. I really think it brings what's extra special to what the internet and social aspect of technology can bring. So that aside, this is the G6-01 Tamiya Dynahead, and we've taken the Willy's driver and put him inside the Suzuki Carry, the K truck made by WPL. There are some other knockoffs as well. I think they're the originator to this particular one. And they don't all come with the Suzuki OEM type badging. So I thought it was worth just a couple extra dollars to get that included. And they were quite nice. So the cab is from that, and then the bed we have is, I put it in the description for you. There is a wooden bed kit that I had to get from mainland China, I believe. So it was time consuming to get that and to modify it for use on this particular platform. And mounting it was also, of course, pretty tricky. There are no magnets or anything to hold the cab down and to hold that flatbed in, because this is pretty much going to be a shelfer. And as it comes around, you'll see the motor there. That is a Trinity Speed Gems series, and I believe that's the Diamond one, which is normally a 12x2. I don't know the gauge or the other specifics offhand. It's somewhere around 30,000 RPMs or so. You might see in the other video that I did have a brushless system in it. That proved to be very challenging as far as the clearance of the cab to the chassis. The speed control, that was I even used right angle connectors. You'll see it it's mentioned in the other video. MEUS Racing, I think they are. And they did, while they offered more clearance for the cab, it just wasn't enough. And I did not want to trim out the inside of the cab any more than I already had to, especially since it was completed. So I guess it's back to the drawing board in some ways when you have some time invested in your project and you haven't laid out all the specifics as you go along. So sometimes you may have to make some adjustments and compromises. In this case, I would have loved to run the other brushless system in here, but it should have been planned a little bit better, is I guess all I'll say about that. As it comes around the back, you might notice the mud flaps in the rear. Those were included in the bed kit, and there's just an extra piece of aluminum there to help make it facilitate a little bit better fitment on that. And then as we come back around again, you'll notice those big, I guess you want to say, mouse ears on the roof. Now, I wasn't really sure how I felt about that. They may still get removed, and maybe I'll put some type of roof rack up there. But what I had bought was some LED lights, and you may recognize the fronts of those as something you could get on the internet readily. But the housing itself, to the the big silver pieces, I thought made a nice complement to that push bar / bumper on the front. So I just wanted to try to balance the big chrome look of that bumper on the front, and also maybe continue to keep in mind the cartoon aspect or flavor of the whole build with the larger 2.8 alloys on there and the Willy's driver. I figured it was a good match. And as we come back around, I'll also just point out the two little red and white wires that are kind of tucked up underneath there from that battery. This particular kit came with a nice battery box, but the indication of this battery itself was merely just a sticker, so I wasn't too fond of that. So I just kind of scratch built a false battery top, like basically to indicate the top of the battery, and then just created some little terminals there with some little hex bolts to indicate the battery terminals themselves. The only other thing that you might see on the back there are the lights and the aluminum rear bumper. that rear bumper, I believe, is from a Clodbuster. It's a vintage hop-up that I had laying around. I still, as of yet, don't own a Clodbuster and never really knew if I was ever going to. And I figured if I've had it in my parts bin for this long, I may as well try to find a project that it's useful for. And the width of it was pretty well in keeping with this particular build. So I went ahead and just drilled some holes in it and ran the wires to those lights that you see in the rear. And then on the front, there's just a couple of little small modifications involving the lower, I guess, park lights and the upper headlights. Those do require a little bit of work to make them look a little nicer. I believe they supply stickers for those lights, even though the actual lens is there, but it's clear, it's not orange. So you're gonna have to go ahead and use an orange marker or a good old standby Tamiya's or Tamiya's, however you like to say it, orange clear. That's kind of my go-to with that oftentimes. It seems to take forever to dry, at least where I am, but it's worth it in the end, I think. It's one of the more believable clear oranges that I have come across. You also see that there's a small indication of an exhaust tip there on the right-hand side, rearmost tire. And that wasn't too tough to do. Believe it or not, that is the shock body of I want to say a Coyote four-wheel drive. I forget the name of the company. I'll try to put that in the description too, but that took just a little bit of basic machining to remove the threads and make the inside diameter a little more agreeable to the aluminum rod that I had for the rest of the exhaust there. I guess that's about everything. And we added a windshield banner. I thought that maybe made it just look a little more aggressive. I really didn't, again, back to, planning everything out first. I would have liked to have had a racing cab, but I really wanted to use this paint that I had around for a while. I think that's Rust-Oleum's color flip paint, I want to say. Again, I'll try to put everything in the descriptions as I normally do, because sometimes my recollection's a little fuzzy. But I would have, I painted that first, and it's rare that I paint a hard plastic body and really love the way that it comes out. And it had come out great, but I had already started on the cab and laying out the lines on his outfit, on his racing suit. So it was kind of like a mismatch in that regard, in my opinion. So then I had toyed with the idea of maybe putting some cargo in the back, maybe some racing tires or maybe a motorcycle that he was transporting. But I had already set up the racing fuel tank back there as if it was more of a display type bed, something you might not actually haul anything with. So these are all little things that you can make little modifications to and adjust so that it'll have, a little more consistency across the board. But back to that cab, that's supposed to be like a color changing paint and all that. The effect is not tremendous. It probably doesn't even show up at all in this video, but it does gradually change from a purplish tint to more of a green that you see it reading. On the roof, you might be able to kind of see a slight hint of it as it comes around. Then we have the front windshield wipers. Those are fairly easy to get. You'll see them around. They kind of come on a flat piece of metal that is, essentially laser cut or die cut in some way that you trim out with the scissors. I highly recommend getting some scissors that are meant for trimming those out. I tried to use a rotary tool to cut it out because I tend to be pretty handy with the precision of that type of tool. But something that may not occur to you if you do try to use a tool like that to cut things that are die cut, the manufacturer of that windshield wiper has not pre-folded, but basically creased beforehand. I guess it's a little bit thinner where you're supposed to fold it. But on the actual windshield wiper part itself, the blade part, some of those metal are very, very thin. And I will tell you that with the heat of the rotary tool, one of the tabs that was meant to be bent just fell off. So in other words, there was enough heat for that metal tab to fall off when the heat was generated to cut that, just those slight tabs down. So it's just something to keep in mind. It's always good to have the proper tools when you do stuff. That's another recommendation I would make. I've used the Tamiya ones myself, the little mini scissors that they make for cutting out those type of parts. The other thing that I would point out to you is in my build that you'll see is the front headlights will have a small, I really used like a die cutter to make a chrome ring that goes around that headlight. So it improves the look of that headlight tremendously, I think. And that's about it. I think I covered everything between this video and the other. The roof headlights do work also. They are very, very bright, so I'm really probably not going to demonstrate them in this video, but they're extremely bright, and I think they'll throw off the exposure of doing this. And they may not stay anyway. It might be a bit of a pain in the neck to remove them at this point because there's a lot of wiring that goes on between the interior lights and the roof lights, the headlights, and then the park lights. That was all a little bit tricky to all fit inside there. I guess that's about it for this one. I toyed with the idea. If you feel like it, let me know if you think it might look better with the centers of the wheels painted black or maybe a dark charcoal. I'm not sure. I debated on the body color, green, for those, but I wasn't quite sure about that one. And though that front bumper is from, I believe it's Tamiya's Tundra. They make a Toyota Tundra, like a high lift version, I guess, so to speak. I think that's the only way that one comes. But that's where that front bumper is from, in case you don't recognize it. I think that covers every detail. You'll see the side mirrors have just a little bit of a metal piece there. That was just to make it look a little more scale and to be able to adjust the angle of those to make it look a little more aggressive, tilt them backwards a little bit. All right, well that concludes this build. If you have any questions, let me know. I'd be more than happy to share it with you. And I hope this video you found some enjoyment in. And take care. Thanks for watching so much.